Shalom, holy initiates and holy adepts. This video is part 0, which would indicate that it is the concealed part to my ongoing series on High Holy Magikh. And I was never really planning on doing this video, and I was hoping that I wouldn't have to do such a video, but there have been a number of subscribers and others that definitely not only need but desired such a video. So I want to begin by just saying a couple of really quick prerequisites for this video, which I would say are my video entitled "The Arcane Construct of Duality" and my video entitled and my series on Adam Kadmon. This is because in order to fully and properly introduce Magikh, you have to have a very strong foundation in understanding the dualistic nature of our reality, and that it is ruled and governed principally by two chief Elohim, vis-a-vis Mashiach and Lucifer. Now, before I actually begin the presentation, I do want to state that, Magikh is probably one of the largest, most comprehensive esoteric subjects out there, and it's not a very easy subject to discourse and teach upon. And so my prayer beginning this video is I just pray to, Mashiach, that he help guide me and give me the eloquence and just helps me, be smooth and properly teach the subject as best can be taught, to beginning initiates and adepts. So definitely want to say that. I also want to state that in ancient Hebrew, there are a few words that signify Magikh, and to begin a full presentation in revealing and expanding upon each of these ancient Hebrew words would be very long. Take a very long time, and it would be very comprehensive. So I'm not going to take that approach, but I will primarily focus on one word, which I think is my favorite ancient Hebrew word. I think the most momentous ancient Hebrew word that signifies Magikh or magic. And so I'll definitely conduct a minor analysis of that word in introducing this subject at hand. It should also be noted that as there are a number of words that signify magic in ancient Hebrew, there is one special word that strictly signifies black magic. In other words, black magic in of itself has its own ancient Hebrew word. And we will not be dealing or covering this aspect of magic in this video for the most part. So I want to begin where I think is the best place to begin, which is in the beginning, literally in the beginning, that is Bereshit, the first word of the Torah, and speaking on the highest divine archetype of magic, and really the magician. Now, we should understand and know that Zeir Anpin, which holistically represents the sun within the Sefirot or the Godhead, is the archetype of the Logos or the divine word, which is Mashiach. So really what we have is we can principally state on a very high level, but a low level within that high level, that we have two archetypal magicians vis-a-vis the sun within the Sefirot and the sun without the Sefirot. One is the archetype to the other. Now, the magician in ancient Hebrew would also be known as Baal HaDebar, which is master of the word, because when we understand this most divine archetype of magic and the magician, right? What we see here in the beginning of the Torah is the archetypal divine magician bringing forth the universe into creation through the medium of speech. And this in of itself represents the highest order and level of holy Magikh. It's extremely critical to understand this. This is the root and source of one of the most ancient Hebrew/Aramaic magical incantation, which is abracadabra, which is Aramaic for "I create as I speak." reflecting this most quintessential property of the archetypal divine magician. I also want to read here a very ancient esoteric folio in one of our principal Kabbalistic texts. In Sefer Tikkun HaZohar in Tikkun 60 in folio 93b, it states, "This is Metatron, like Moshe Rabbeinu, who performed magical operations with it, like the middle pillar who performs magical operations with it and conducts the lower realms. Likewise, Moshe was like him, performing magical operations through the staff." Now, one thing that I think many Jews and Christians don't realize is that the staff of Moshe was in all reality a wand. In other words, the ancient Hebrew word for staff is also the same word for wand. They're one and the same. If you are initiated, you know and you understand this. Now, in the first part to my series on High Holy Magikh, which is entitled The Holy Implements, at the moment, I cannot remember whether I stated that a magical wand is part of these holy implements for practicing Holy Magikh. And this is most lamentable. Now, if you have seen that video and I did not mention a magical wand as one of the holy implements, then I apologize, because it should definitely be listed as one of the most major holy implements in performing Holy Magikh, and Moshe is our most perfect divine archetype of this. And so this is very, very critical to understand. And so here in Tikkun HaZohar, we have a folio that is brilliantly illuminating and elucidating these mysteries behind Holy Magikh, and unveiling the highest divine archetype behind this Holy Magikh. And so it's very, very critical to understand, because for the master magician, speech and faith are his medium. And this is what we see one of Yeshua's primary focus on his teachings was when he was here on earth. There were times where he mysteriously taught about this, where at one instance he said, you could cast this mountain out of you if you had but the faith of a mustard seed, right? So he understood all of these holy mysteries and secrets very, very well. You see, you have to understand that we, Israelites, are the perfect image of the holy divine archetype, which is Mashiach. And if you go one level above or higher, that's Feroth. So if our divine archetype, which is our Heavenly Father, is a master divine magician who is a master of speech, a master of the word, creating and performing magical operations through the medium of speech, then we, being the image, ergo it logically follows that we too should operate in the same manner. Now, it is also written in the ancient Holy Torah that Adonai is holy. As a result, he commands us, "Ye shall be holy, because I, Adonai, am holy." The image must conform to the archetype. Once you reach the highest levels of holiness through the observance and protection of the mitzvot of the Torah, then you become holy. And when you reach those highest levels, you then conform to the archetype, and then you can be truly called an image of that holy divine archetype, which is Adam Karmon. And it is when you reach that state and that level that then you become the master magician. And now you can perform magical operations through the medium of speech coupled with faith, which is the spark to it all. So I can only hope that you can begin to fully understand and comprehend everything that I just stated, because it is extremely momentous of the highest order, it may be stated. So let us move on. Now we proceed to speaking a little on oneiromancy. You may be asking, what is oniromancy? Well, if you do not know, we can say it's just a fancy word for magic and divination through dreams, which in of itself it comprises a large subset of the subject of Magikh. Now, we read in Sefer Daniel in chapter 4, verses 8 to 9, it states, "But at the last Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar. O Belteshazzar, master, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy Elohim is in thee, and no secret troubleth thee. Tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and the interpretation thereof." Now, there's a couple of very momentous levels and points to this verse that we need to address. But before we do, a very quick side note is that you will see here the word Elohim ending with the letter N rather than the letter M. And that is because the book of Daniel was originally written in Aramaic, and Aramaic is slightly different from Hebrew. So while in Hebrew, the gods is Elohim, in Aramaic, it becomes Elohim. Now, to the first momentous point of the verse, duly note that in this verse, Daniel is being designated or has been designated as the chief magician of all magicians of ancient Babylon. By who? By the king of Babylon. And who appointed the king of Babylon? None other than Adonai. Thus, we may state that Daniel is designated in the Holy Scriptures a chief magician, the master of all magicians in his generation, by all the kings of the earth, and most importantly, Adonai. Duly note this, because unfortunately, this appears to be lost on practically so many baby Christians and Jews that I just seem to encounter these days. Second point is, this is our first critical example in the ancient Holy Scriptures of oniromancy, that is divination through dreams. Here we see a perfect example of Nimrod divining through his dream, and having Daniel, a holy prophet, a holy magician, who is the key to unlocking that magic and divination. So here we have a perfect example of a subset of Magikh, which is oniromancy. Thus, it is most fitting that Daniel should be called a master magician. The rest, I will let it speak for itself. But let us proceed to one of my most favorite verses regarding Magikh in the Torah. We read in Sefer Bereshith in chapter 44, verse 15, it states, "And Yosef said unto them, What deed is this that ye have done? Wot ye not that such a man as I can divine divination?" Now, we need to understand that Yosef was a Zadik of the highest order. And additionally, it is a fact through the verses that Yosef was the chief magician of Egypt. It is very clear from the verses that Yosef was the vice lord of all of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. And he was the chief magician of Egypt as well. Comes with the territory of being the vice lord of Egypt. The ancient initiated sages also teach that he divined through the goblet, as is evinced in the subsequent verses. Now, we need to understand that here we have a classic, perfect example of very holy divination being performed by Yosef. This is a matter of fact. Now, I have to say this because we have many ignorant Christians, and to some extent Jews, who like to teach that all forms of divination are verboten or forbidden. Such teaching is an expression and demonstration of profound ignorance, and most lamentable, to say the least. Again, this is why it is critical to understand the dualistic nature of our reality. There are two types of divination, vis-a-vis that of which is permitted and that which is forbidden. This is the first critical point to understand. It should also be noted that there are many holy mysteries behind this verse, of which I don't have the time and space to get into. But you should duly note that the word for divination here is repeated twice. Now, this word here that is used for divination is a very, very special word. And we will get a little deeper into illuminating this verse and the word that is used here for divination in a little while. But before we do, let us speak for a moment on Mystery Babylon. Right? We read in the book of Acts in chapter 7, verse 22, it states, "And Moshe was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds." Now, we need to understand a few very arcane points here. As I'm sure many of you at this point have gotten used to me always saying that there are many levels to every Hebrew word. Every Hebrew word, in essence, is a code word. So we need to ask, Kabbalistically, what does Egypt signify? What does Mystery Babylon signify? Well, if you are initiated, you know that there is a mystical equation between Mystery Babylon, Babylon, and Egypt, which is in ancient Hebrew is known as Mitzrayim. Now, what do they represent? Now, unfortunately, we have many ignorant Christians who have been, Christianity has just been full of ignorance for the past, 1800 years or so. A key example of this ignorance is there are many Christians that, regarding the most esoteric Kabbalistic book of the entire scriptures, which is the book of the Apocalypse or Revelation, when teaching and speaking on Mystery Babylon, there are many Christians who like to teach that Mystery Babylon occultly represents the Catholic Church. They're actually partially correct, but again, they are not fully initiated, and they do not have a full comprehension of this very esoteric Kabbalistic book. Now, I'm going to reveal here some very esoteric knowledge that, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really know hardly anyone, if not anyone really, that knows what I'm about to state here. And that is that on the most esoteric level, Mystery Babylon, or really Babylon, represents Lilith, the wife of Samael. That is what it represents. Now, if you are initiated, you should also know that Babylon is equated with Mystery Babylon. They are one and the same. If you read Sefer Daniel and the Book of the Apocalypse, you'll notice many equations and similarities between the two books. These are very esoteric Kabbalistic books that are not fully understood by most, if not all, Christians, and as well as most Jews as well, unfortunately. And so we then need to understand that there is this very profound mystical equation between Mystery Babylon, Babylon, and Egypt. They all simultaneously, on the most esoteric level, telestically represent Lilith. Now, we need to understand that Babylon, the ancient country Babylon, was run and controlled by spiritual archons. Every nation principally has a spiritual divine archon behind it that's running it. Okay? And Babylon was primarily run by Samael and Lucifer. I mean, my mistake, Samael and Lilith. As is stated in the Book of the Apocalypse, Mystery Babylon is also run by Lilith and Samael. That's why these are code words representing their the archon that rules them, or the god that rules that country. In fact, this is very brilliantly illuminated in a folio in Sefer HaZohar, which at the moment I do not had the time to include in the presentation, but there is a folio in Sefer HaZohar that brilliantly explains this, how it brilliantly illuminates how the name of a nation, as would be known in the ancient languages, in this case Hebrew, simultaneously represented not just the name of the nation, but was also an occult reference to the God that governs that nation. Now, Mitzrayim, which is the ancient Hebrew word for Egypt, principally is a binary word. It is a plural word, which, if you are initiated, you understand that at its most basic level, this signifies a binary construct. In this case, the root word of Mitzrayim is the Hebrew word zur, which may signify a rock or a boulder, but it may also signify an adversary. And so, Kabbalistically, Mitzrayim is telling us that it is primarily and chiefly governed by two adversaries. Now, we know that the ancient Hebrew word for adversary is also Satan. So what we have here is Mitzrayim very telestically indicating that this nation, this construct, is run by two chief Elohim, in this case, Samael and Lilith. It's the same with Babylon and Mystery Babylon. Now, knowing that, Mystery Babylon and Egypt and Babylon are all run by Samael and Lilith, what we have then is we have a Luciferian kingdom at hand. We have to understand that Daniel, when he was the chief magician of Babylon, he was the chief magician of a Luciferian nation that was primarily run by Lilith. So he worked in the highest royal court, surrounded by a bunch of impure, unholy occultists, magicians, and goyim. This is a fact. The king, the magicians, the sorcerers, all of the people in the royal court were on the payroll of Lilith and Lucifer, all appointed by Lucifer and Lilith. And Daniel is in the midst of all of them. We find the same thing with Moshe and Yosef as well. So what we then need to understand, and this is very, very momentous to understand, is that when you are initiated, you will understand that when you read this verse in Acts chapter 7, verse 22, that states, "And Moshe was learned in all of the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds," that Moshe was learned in all of the wisdom of the Egyptians. If you are initiated, now that I have revealed to you the keys to these occult code words, essentially what it is stating is that Moshe was fully initiated into the Luciferian mysteries. The same applies to Yosef and Daniel. These three chief magicians in their generation were fully initiated into the Luciferian mysteries. But what set apart these three holy figures from all of their companions is that they were not just only fully initiated into the Luciferian mysteries, but they were fully initiated into the holy mysteries. And that is because they were simultaneously fully initiated into both the holy and Luciferian mysteries, that they stood out, and they outranked all of their colleagues. This is the great secret here. Now, we read in Talmud Babli in Tractate Sanhedrin in folio 68a, which is discoursing generally on magic. It states, "Did we not learn that if he performs black magic, he is liable? If it is only if it is only to teach, it is different. For it has been said," quoting Devarim chapter 18, verse 9, "Thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of the Goyim. Thou mayst not learn in order to practice, but thou mayst learn to understand." There's a big difference here, right? There is a big difference between gaining all of the knowledge and wisdom of the Luciferian mysteries and actually practicing it. The Torah does not forbid being fully initiated into the Luciferian mysteries. That would break the scriptures, because the scriptures implicitly tell us that Joseph, Moshe, and Daniel were fully initiated into the Luciferian mysteries. You just cannot practice those. You just cannot practice the Luciferian mysteries vis-a-vis black magic. So this is all very, very critical to understand, because, again, I am the chief magician of Mystery Babylon, and there are many. Every now and then, I'm running up against very ignorant, Christians and Jews that think that like to equate me with an impure, unholy occultist, as if I'm a Luciferian or a Satanist or an impure, unholy, ignorant Gentile occultist, like many of the occultists of the past 3 centuries who belonged, to wannabe, Hermetic orders, etc. No, this is not me. This is not the case. And all they do most of the time is demonstrate their ignorance on the Holy Scriptures, which is most lamentable, to say the least. Okay, Daniel was the chief magician of Mystery Babylon. He was employed by a Luciferian king in a Luciferian country, surrounded by Luciferian colleagues. Do we state that Daniel was an impure, unholy occultist? No, he was a holy occultist of the highest order. Now let us go back and speak on the verse that I was just speaking on in Sefer Breshith regarding Yosef performing magical operations or divination. Now the Hebrew root word for divination in that verse is nachash, which you should know also signifies serpent. This is where it gets really, really interesting. You see, the Hebrew word nachash may not only signify divination, but it may also signify Magikh and all branches of magic. Nachash is a very ancient Hebrew word that may be a reference to any subject or form of Magikh, whether it's orthonomancy, onoromancy, you name it, any form of Magikh, Nachash covers it all. So really then, when you have this understanding, because you are initiated, and you understand the verse then to generally more accurately read as Joseph is stating, do you not know that I'm a master magician who performs magical operations? The repetition of this word twice is to put a strong emphasis on him being a master of magical operations. In other words, a master magician. Then again, it's very evident from the verses that he is the chief magician of Egypt. Now, this gets really, really interesting, because when you are highly initiated, then you understand that there are two serpents, principally, vis-a-vis Mashiach, the son of Elohim, and Lucifer, who was also another son of Elohim. And quintessentially, all Magikh falls in one of their domains. All holy Magikh is performed through Mashiach, the chief serpent, the superior serpent in every regard. But all black Magikh is performed through Lucifer, the inferior evil serpent. And this goes back to my most favorite teaching of Yeshua HaMashiach when he was here on earth, where he stated, "Be ye wise as serpents." He himself being the wisest serpent of them all. And we, being his sons, must be wise serpents just as our serpentine father is. Very, very critical to understand. Now, up to this point, just with this minor teaching alone, be it very, very powerful, you have a powerful key and tool to further expand your initiation into the Holy Scriptures, in researching and finding every instance of this word as it is used in the Torah, and penetrating those verses for the deeper holy mysteries. Now, let us speak for a while on the impure, unholy occult, which I'm always lambasted upon, because nothing upsets me more than impure, unholy occultists, right? We have this reality where for the past 800 years or so, we've had nothing but the vast majority of occultists being very impure, very ignorant, and very unholy, practicing verboten arts, verboten magic, etc. Now, I want to begin by reading what I consider to be the most fitting introduction, or part of one of many introductions into Magikh, which is a book known as Sha'arei Kedusha, which is Hebrew for Gates of Holiness, written by a highly initiated chief magician known as Chaim Vital, who was the chief disciple of the Arizal, who was, for all intents and purposes, one of the greatest magicians that I guess has ever walked the earth in the past 1,500 years or so. Now, in the introduction to this book, this is what Chaim Vital has to say in introducing the first gate into holiness and its subsequent holy gates. So listen very carefully. He states, "I've seen men of Aliyah, or spiritual ascent, and they are few." Well, boy, is that not true. That has been true for too long now, I would say. "They yearn to rise, but the ladder is concealed from their eyes. And there are those among them which would adjure angels using the powers in holy names, and they would hope for light. But behold, it is darkness, because they were very low angels, appointed on the matters of this world, and they are mixed with good and evil, so they themselves did not attain truth and the supernal lights. And they, the angels, would reveal to them mixed words, good and evil, truth and falsehood, superfluous words, such as the words of healing and the wisdom of alchemy, and actions of amulets, talismans, and abjuring in using names. And also these in wine they stumbled, and in beer they erred. Would it that it were that their hearts would bring them to toil in the Torah and the mitzvot, and they would make a major to minor logical inference from the four great sages of Israel who entered Pardes, or paradise, and not one of them returned intact except the pious elder Rab Akiba, and even him the ministering angels desired to cast him down, if it were not that Allah helped him, and he entered in peace and exited in peace." Then quoting Talmud Tractate Chagiga, folio 14b, Hakadosh Baruch Hu said, "Leave this elder alone, for he is worthy of making use of my glory." Now, what I really like about this introduction is that Chaim Vital is very brilliantly summarizing the spiritual condition of most of the elite and occultists up to his generation, which most of them, as I'm constantly beating the point, are very impure and very unholy. And then there are many of them that end up joining the ranks of Lucifer and his children and his army. The quintessential paragon of this is Aleister Crowley. So this is why it's one of my favorite introductions, because he's summarizing what essentially has been the reality up to his generation, which is most lamentable. And this has not just been up the reality of the Goyim up to his generation, but it's even been up to our generation. The same the same condition exists. The spiritual condition of most of the Goyim, the elite and occultist Goyim up to this generation, that's still the case even up to our generation. Nothing has changed since the generation of Chaim Vital. And what's even most relevant, most momentous to understand, is that in this introduction, he's not just summarizing the condition of the Goyim, but most principally of the Jews. He's saying we got too many Jews that are impure and unholy occultists. And he's absolutely right. First of all, we Jews throughout the entire history of this Aeon have always been known as the most powerful magicians and the most initiated into all occult matters. Many peoples consider us to be the most magical society that has ever walked the earth, and that's absolutely correct. It is our heritage. It is our memorial as a holy nation. The problem is that up to his generation, and even up to this current generation, the spiritual condition of most of the elite occultist Jews has been, many of them are impure and they're very unholy because they're not fully initiated. Okay, and in this introduction, he's saying many of these Kabbalistic Jews have gotten so entrenched in impure, unholy, verboten magic that they're doing things that they should know better, that they shouldn't be doing. Most of them are adjuring angels, and they're not just adjuring any angels, they're mostly adjuring the inferior angels, the lowest of the angels, the most inferior of angels. Why you would want to do that is beyond me. And if you have that most basic understanding, most basic of holy initiations, you understand the inferiority in adjuring, angels, well, especially the inferior lowly angels. And so here he reveals what has been hidden in plain sight since the beginning of the Aeon. The only thing that counts, the only thing that matters, is labor in the Torah and keeping the mitzvot. Perfect that. That's when the magic really begins. When you begin to perfect that. That's what separates us holy Jewish Kabbalistic, grandmasters and magicians from the rest of the impious, profane, uninitiated herd. It cannot be stressed enough. And when you realize this most basic point, it becomes lamentable because all you see is stupidity and ignorance left and right all around. Especially among all of these elite occultists, impure and unholy, that think they're so smart, that think they're so intelligent, that they're so wise, that they're so elitist. And if you have true eyes to see, you see nothing but babies covered in poop. It's most lamentable, to say the least. Now, let us proceed now to speaking on, for a while, the Essenes, because the Essenes are the most recent divine archetype that we have for super initiated saints, Kabbalists, and magicians. Now, what's really annoying is that how it's lost on so many biblical scholars, whether Jew or Christian, as to what the actual meaning of Essene is. It's so basic, it's so obvious if you are fluent in ancient Aramaic and Hebrew. The Hebrew word Essene comes from the ancient Aramaic word asin, which means to heal, meaning primarily they were known to be healers. And they preserved all of the esoteric texts, whether good or bad. And I think what is lost on most Christians and Jews, very lamentably, is that many of our principal esoteric Jewish texts were actually preserved by them. They come from them. Their source is them. The Essenes were the preservers and guardians of all of the very ancient, holy Israeli Kabbalistic texts, both evil and holy. And the secret society of holy Jewish Kabbalists have preserved them throughout the generations, beginning with the Essenes. All very holy Grandmaster Jewish Kabbalists throughout the generations are all descendants and disciples of the Essenes. I myself am a descendant of the ancient Essenes. I'm a disciple of the ancient Essenes. Our entire esoteric tradition comes from them. Now, we read in Jewish Wars, written by Flavius Josephus, in Book 2, in line 6 to 7, he states, "Any word from them has more force than an oath. Adjuring they avoid, regarding it as worse than perjury, and the initiate Essene swears to carefully preserve the books of the angels." Now, what we see here is that we share first very ancient historical proof that the Essenes were fully initiated Kabbalists. They had many books with the names of angels. And we Jewish Kabbalists, we still have those same books. Many of our principal Kabbalistic texts, whether it's Sefer HaZohar or Tikkun HaZohar, you name it, we have all of the names of many powerful angels in those books. We know the names of very powerful angels. We know all of their names. They're written in all of our magical treatises, which all go back to the Essenes, and from the Essenes they go back even further to Shlomo and to Moshe, etc. Now, duly note that they avoided adjuring. So you would never have them perform any type of Magikh that involves adjurations, because It is the holy custom of the holy saint. They know better. They avoid adjuring at all costs. It's not part of our tradition. It's not part of our society to adjure. So, knowing this basic fact, any magikh that involves adjurations would be considered forbidden or verboten. Unfortunately, this has been lost amongst all impure and holy occultists who are uninitiated. Don't have the basics down. That's the problem. They don't have the basics down. And that's very, very dangerous. You get in way, way over your head when you don't have the basics down. Now, let me reveal now some of the esoteric dynamics behind unholy adjurations, specifically when they involve demons. We read in the very ancient Veracious Clementine homilies, in homily 2, in chapter 31. This is a very, very advanced section that I'm going to read here, that only those who have very strong spiritual foundations will be able to understand. It is a passage that exemplifies and demonstrates the immense brilliance and perspicacity of the ancient initiates and adepts. So I'm not going to comment on the verse. I will let it speak for itself because it is that powerful and that brilliant, to say the least. It begins by stating, the demon that is conjured, what is it afraid of that it does not despise the conjuration? Then Shimon, the black magician, here Shimon is the most powerful black magician in the generation of Mashiach, states, it knows that it should suffer punishment if it were disobedient. Then said Aquila, therefore, if the soul comes when conjured, there is also a judgment. If therefore souls are immortal, assuredly there is also a judgment. And you say then that those which are conjured on wicked business are punished if they disobey. How are you not afraid to compel them when those that are compelled are punished for disobedience? For it is not wonderful that you do not already suffer for your doings, seeing that the judgment has not yet come. When you are to suffer the penalty of those deeds which you have compelled others to do, and with that which has been done under compulsion shall be pardoned, as having been out of respect for the oath which led to the evil action. And he, hearing this, was enraged and threatened death to us if we did not keep silence as to his doing. Here we have a most genius. This is the epitome of genius exposure of the Luciferian mysteries. And Shimon is totally smoked, totally choked, and put in his place. And all he can do is get very upset and throw a rage and a fit. He's got no comeback. This is the nature and essence of black magic, and why it is most verboten. Now I want to introduce some of my own parables. These parables, they're my own parables that came to me by way of divinity in helping to understand and explain the nature of magic in general. Now, I begin with this parable. We say that there is a kingdom, and it had a royal palace with the king who had a few royal sons. And the kingdom is run by many of the king's servants in the palace. So understanding this, then, we should know that the kingdom represents our planet Earth, the palace represents the heavens, the king represents Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and the sons represent Israel. Now, impure, unholy, ignorant people or magicians would adjure and work with the servants, which are most inferior. The wise, holy sons only deal with the king. Because if you understand ancient royal law, which is an image of supernal divine royal law, then you should know that it is forbidden for the royal sons to be seen with or talk to the servants. Royal law decrees that servants serve the sons, not the other way around. This is because most verboten magic has the magician engaging almost always, if not always, into a spiritual demonic contract with the daemon or entity that he is conjuring. And so, being an Israelite means that you are a son of God. you're superior in every single way. So there's no reason for you to deal with the servants. You're not a servant, you're a son. You're a son of the king. You show your inferiority, you display and demonstrate your sheer inferiority when you deal with the servants, when you are seen with the servants. This is what impure, unholy magicians are doing, and they don't even understand it. They don't even have this most basic understanding and conception of what they're doing. Another little parable is, imagine you live in a house when you were young and you live in the same house as your father and your mother. When a desire aroused within you, say for some money to go buy some bubble gum or candy, who did you go excuse me, who did you go to ask for money or for that candy or bubble gum? You went to your father. You would go to Papa or Abba and you say, Abba, can you give me 50 cents so I can go buy some bubble gum at the store? Right? What would happen if you crossed the street to your neighbor or a stranger and you asked him for money for candy or bubble gum? One, that's forbidden by Abba. His job is to look after you, look over you, and protect you. One, it's dangerous for a little child to go to a stranger. The stranger may kidnap him, may abduct him. Two, it's an embarrassment that a little kid has to go to his neighbor or to a stranger to ask for something. It's an embarrassment. Why not go to your father? Why not go to your mother? Where's your father? Where's your mother? Hopefully you can begin to understand why so much of magic as has been known and understood by the past 8 centuries or so has mostly been verboten and impure and unholy. It's most lamentable, to say the least. Now here's another very momentous parable. There's a presidential palace, and it contains the most high officials vis-a-vis the president and the senators, etc. But it also contains janitors and cleaners and garbage men. Now, you have to understand, we're speaking on magic here. Not just anyone can call and meet the high officials or the president, right? Go to your average blue-collar worker in America. Can any average blue-collar worker or common man just get on the phone and talk to the president? Do they even have the number to the president? No, they don't. Not even a senator. Can't do that. And so then, when I meet these very stupid, these very spiritually retarded, impure, unholy occultists, who may come to me and tell me, well, last week I conjured the Archangel Michael. I conjured the Archangel Raphael. Or I read stupid grimoires that says, you know, magical ritual to invoke or evoke the Archangel Michael or Raphael. The sheer stupidity, the sheer retardation. I mean, my Elohai, I mean, they don't know how stupid and retarded they are, you know, and just the highest demonstration of stupidity and ignorance and just spiritual retardation, to say the least. What makes you think, you impure, you unholy goy, that you can invoke or evoke the Archangel Michael, who, by the way, is Yeshua HaMashiach in angelic form? Or very high archons and Elohim. Who are you? It's like in the New Testament when you read the stupid Jews who were trying to perform exorcisms using the name of Yeshua, and the demon, there's an example in the New Testament where a demon answers back to the Jew and says, I know Shaul, but who are you? I don't know you. They knew Shaul. You know why they knew Shaul? Because he was a holy Grandmaster Kabbalist. He was highly initiated and extraordinarily holy. He had reached the highest levels of holiness. So they knew who he was. He was a somebody in the kingdom of Elohim. Impure, unholy occultists, most of them goyim, they're nobodies in the kingdom of Elohim. So who the hell do you think they're actually invoking it? Who the hell do you think they're evoking and invoking in these rituals? I got news for you. It ain't holy divine entities. You have to be really foolish, really ignorant, really stupid and retarded to think that you, being impure, being unholy, uninitiated, are going to be able to invoke the highest of the Elohim. More often than not, who are they invoking? Who are they evoking? The janitors, the cleaners, the garbage men. right? There may be cases where, in the presidential palace, maybe a cleaner or a garbage man is walking the hallways as he's cleaning, and he just happens to overhear a secret conversation between a couple of senators or something of that sort. And then the impure, unholy magician that conjures up that garbage man, in this case, the demon or fallen angel, can then get some information. But it's going to come at a cost. This is a garbage man. He's poor. He doesn't just do anything for free. It's going to come at a cost, right? If a spy approaches the garbage man to get this esoteric information, the garbage man is going to be like, what I'm doing is against royal decree and royal law. So it's going to come at a very high price. Not to mention the fact that he's poor. So he's going to ask for very great things in return. Very forbidden things. These are the evil demonic contracts that are that many impure and holy magicians are being initiated into, most of the time very, very unknowingly. Because at the end of the dotted line is very long eternal punishment in hell. It's not pretty. Now, let us speak on the way of the saint, right? When you read the Hebrew scriptures, almost every single time, you always read about Elohim coming to the holy saint, not the other way around, right? We read in Sefer Magikh in chapter 4, verse 6, it states, "And saith unto him, If thou be the son of Elohim, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dashest thy foot against a stone." Then we read in verse 11, it states, "Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him." We also read in Sefer Tehillim in chapter 91, verse 11, it states, "For he will command his malachim to guard you in all your ways." And in chapter 34, verse 8, it states, "The malach of Adonai encamps around those in fear of him and delivers them." So from here we learn that the first point to really know and understand is that when you keep the Torah and its commandments at a very high level, you are instantaneously granted automatic protection, divine protection, by numerous legions of angels around you protecting you, right? If Mashiach, our Father, our Heavenly Father, has legions of angels at his command, and has many angels guarding and protecting him when he incarnated here on earth, and he's the archetype, then us being an image of that must reflect some aspect of that archetype, meaning we too have angels at our disposal to command, and also that they protect us. So you don't read in the Bible anywhere about holy saints performing these very complex esoteric rituals to conjure up angels. There's no need to. Even I, from my own personal life, I've never had a need to conjure up angels. They're always there protecting me. I can give you numerous supernatural stories of angels, literally angels protecting me and guarding me. Revelations, divine revelations from my heavenly parents telling me, in this situation, in that situation, angels protected you from this happening and that happening. This happened to me on many occasions. And if you are a true saint, your life will be very similar to mine in this regard. So there's no need to be commanding all of these angels left and right. You don't even see Yeshua when he was here on earth performing any complex esoteric rituals, to conjure up angels for this and that. The angels were already there. They're already working on his behalf. Now, staying on the same point, I want to reveal a very great secret of the Torah, which I just very quickly stated about a minute ago. Now, we read in Sefer Bereshit in chapter 32, verses 1 to 4, it states, "And Yaakov went on his way, and the Malachim met him, and when Yaakov saw them, he said, 'This is the camp of Elohim,' and he called the name of that place double camp or camps, and Yaakov sent Malachim to Esau, and he commanded them." Now, most inferior English translations of this verse will have the last sentence says, "And Yaakov sent messengers to Esau." So the very mystical point of this passage gets lost on practically every Christian because they don't know Hebrew. The word malachim, yes, may signify messengers, but it may also signify divine entities or divine messengers, which are angels. Now, we read in Sefer HaZohar in Book 1, in folio 166a, commenting on this verse, it states, "Some of those angels from a double camp he sent to Esau." What we have here on a very telistic level is Yaakov, this very high and mighty powerful divine archetype, which represents Mashiach, sending angels to Esau and commanding them. If we read it on the literal level, what we have is a holy saint commanding angels. Either way, the implications and the ramifications of this are very powerful indeed. Very wonderful indeed. Now, again, to get to this level, you have to be very, very holy. Most people never reach these levels of holiness. In fact, I would say maybe 99% of individuals, maybe 99.9% of individuals will never reach these levels of holiness. But it is for us Israelites, being images of this archetype, being sons of Yaakov. Now, yes, it does require very high levels of holiness, but even if you reach a very compatible, decent level of holiness, you can still do it. And I'll give you an example. This is what was taught to me by my Rab when I was first initiated. He taught the congregation this very great secret holy mystery, but because there was many babes in the congregation, there wasn't many, but there was quite a number of babes, they considered him a heretic, and many of them left this holy synagogue because my first Rab was a highly initiated Kabbalist, if not one of the most initiated Kabbalists, during this generation. And many, certain people were too intellectually and spiritually weak to accept and understand this great holy mystery. Now, it's very simple, right? We read in the New Testament that Yeshua says he likens the kingdom of Elohim to little children. In other words, he's equating, or he's referring to the nature and character and disposition of little children. And this is usually my standard for discerning holy Magikh from forbidden Magikh. More often than not, I find that black magic usually has to do with very, very esoteric, but more importantly, very, very complex rituals. And there, in contradistinction to the kingdom of Elohim, we find simplicity and an eloquence that permeates its magic. And I would say this applies to commanding angels. I do it every now and then, right? I'll give you an example. Sometimes I may get a little bit worried about a family member, and I'll just say this very, very quick prayer. It says, right now, I command 1 legion of angels in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach to go and protect my so-and-so beloved sister or uncle or whatever. Having the faith that Mashiach is going to dispatch angels or additional angels to protect my loved one, whoever it may be. It's that simple. But if you're impure and you're unholy, it will have no effect. It will be to no effect. Now, I want to speak on getting at the heart and core of what holy Magikh is. So I want to list a few points here that at the core, the essence of the matter, what holy Magikh is it is conducting holy animal sacrifices, performing long holy fasts, burning and offering incense to Alahei Yisrael, more specifically the Queen of Heaven, which is one of the most powerful and potent magical operations, performing Yichudim, lots of prayer and solitary meditation, which are most especially the standard liturgical prayers vis-a-vis the Amida and praying in tongues, and speaking holy matters in faith. These are all subsets of holy Magikh. And when these are all done together in union, you're performing, it's like setting off nuclear bombs in the spirit realm, you know, a most powerful nuclear bomb in the spirit realm. This quintessentially are some examples of the core operations of holy Magikh, right? Conducting holy animal sacrifices. This is a very large and complex subject of holy Magikh. In fact, I have a couple of chapters in my first treatise dealing with this because it's a very important matter. It all comes down to, you know, does the Torah currently permit us to perform animal sacrifices or not? It's a very complex matter. I don't want to get into it in this video. It's beyond the canon scope of this video, but I have a couple of chapters that will profoundly teach you on this matter. And I have another chapter in my first treatise that will reveal to you the greatest divine mystery and power and secret behind holy animal sacrifices. Conducting holy animal sacrifices is one of the most powerful magical operations that you can perform. Again, holy animal sacrifices that are offered up to Elohei Israel and only Elohei Israel, right? The antithesis to this is black magic, which performs the animal sacrifices to the inferior Elohim. Okay, that's the difference between holy Magikh and black magic. Again, understand the principal duality that permeates this reality, this construct, okay? There are holy animal sacrifices, and then there are the evil, impure animal sacrifices. A lot of Magikh deals with animal sacrifices to inferior Elohim. A lot of black magic deals with this. That's the whole essence and teaching of the Torah, right? One of the greatest secrets and mysteries behind the animal sacrifices in the Torah is what animals are permitted to be sacrificed. There are numerous profound, I can't even begin to tell you how many profound esoteric mysteries are behind all of the animal sacrifices in the Torah. The whole section of animal sacrifices, every section of verse dealing with animal sacrifices in the Torah has numerous profound esoteric mysteries behind it. This is a matter of fact. And quintessentially the core of the Torah telling you what animals are permitted is to tell you, listen, when you are performing magical operations, these are the only animals that you may employ in doing these holy magical operations, right? In black magic, more often than not, you will find, you know, the animal sacrifices being from the impure, unclean, forbidden animals of the Torah, right? When the Torah states that you can, you know, tells you these are the animals that you can eat of. Why are these the only animals that you can eat of? Because these are the only animals that you can sacrifice on the altar. Because these are the only animals that belong to holy magical operations, which is why you will find that a lot of the animals that are mentioned in the black magic grimoires and treatises are the impure, unclean animals, like sacrificing cats and dogs, snakes, etc. Okay? Long holy fasts is a very critical, essential component of holy magic because you need to understand the mathematical relationship between the body and the spirit. Your spiritual essence is inversely proportional to your carnality. In order to become more spiritual and spiritually powerful, which is what a master magician is, you have to die to your flesh. You have to be born again. This is what Yeshua was talking about. Being born again. What does it mean to be born again? To walk in the spirit. How do you walk in the spirit? You must die to your flesh. You must suppress your entire carnality. By killing your flesh, suppressing carnality, your spirit isn't allowed to, your spirit can then rise. And then you then walk in the spirit and you become very spiritually powerful and you begin operating in the spirit. Holy fasts are a prerequisite, a most strict, momentous requisite to performing the highest, most potent, powerful magical operations. Now you'll read in the New Testament that Yeshua and the ancient sages commanded that you should be fasting 1 to 3 days every single week. If you are not fasting 1 to 3 days every single week, you can't even be considered a holy initiate and holy adept. And that's not to include that you should be also you should try to also fit in a 20 to 40 day fast every single year. There's a reason why we're called holy initiates and holy adepts and master magicians, because we're walking in the spirit. To be walking in the spirit, we have to suppress carnality at the highest levels. This is what we see in the Near Eastern religions, which are the antithesis to holy magic. They practice verboten arts and magic, but there is a common foundation that links both. They too, the most powerful black magicians, most of them that are found in the Near East, like in Tibet, in Hinduism, in India, etc., they go on very long fasts too. They have to suppress the flesh. If you want to become a powerful black magician or white magician, there's a very common foundation to both domains. And one of those is the suppression of carnality. Now, another very powerful act is burning incense. And there's a very great secret behind this, right? When we analyze the Holy Temple of Israel, what do we notice? Where are the animal sacrifices being performed? The animal sacrifices are performed in the outer court. Where is the incense burned? It's not burned in the outer court. It's not burned even in the inner court. It is burned in the Holy of Holies. Now, the most initiated Grandmaster Kabbalists of antiquity, going back 2,000 years, they reveal a very great secret mystery, and they says, based upon this analysis, this then indicates to us that the offering of incense is far greater and far more powerful than animal sacrifices. And if you can understand the power, and I do, of animal sacrifices, then it should boggle your mind and your spirit as to the great immense power of burning incense being greater than that of animal sacrifices. Just based on this holy analysis alone. Next up is the Yehudim, which I already have an ongoing series on that you can go and watch. And also lots of prayer and meditation, because prayer is performing magic, is a subset of magical operations. When you are in prayer, there is a lot of magical activity that is spiritually taking place as a result of your prayer. I think this is very common sense and very basic, so I don't want to belabor the point. More quintessentially speaking, holy matters in faith, right? This is the highest level of Magikh. When you speak holy matters into faith, into existence. The example being earlier that I stated of Yeshua stating, you could move this mountain, but you had the faith of a mustard seed. Now he's talking about real high-level, powerful, holy Magikh. When you begin to manipulate reality for holy purposes and for the divine will. Again, there's a difference between black magic and white magic. White magic, you are bending reality for the divine will, for holy purposes, whereas black magic, it's the opposite. You're bending it for your will, or for evil purposes or matters, or for selfish purposes or matters. Now, let us go speak on the great animus and arcanum behind holy Magikh. I come back to the initial verse that I presented, found in Sefer Daniel chapter 4, verse 8 to 9. Right, it states, but at the last Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, O Belteshazzar, master or chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy Elohim is in thee. Now this verse, hidden in plain sight in this verse, is the revelation of the great arcanum and animus of holy Magikh, which is spiritual possession of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, at the highest level, full 100% possession of it. I mean real full-blown 100% possession of the Ruach HaKodesh. You're speaking almost on the level of being an incarnation of a god, so to speak, of a very high God, God. That is what separated these chief magicians of antiquity from everyone else, most especially the other magicians. They were possessed fully by the Holy Spirit. If only you could know and taste of that spiritual power, of being fully possessed by the Holy Spirit. I have prayed many times to be fully possessed by Holy Spirits, and I've very slightly tasted some of the crumbs of being possessed by very powerful Holy Spirits from this Feroth. There's a lot of power. This is where the power comes from. There's no need to do all of these complex esoteric rituals and whatnot. You know, many magicians that get all caught up in the legal terms and rituals of these impure magical attacks and all these rituals. This and so has to be done at this hour on that hour with this herb, you know, with that sacrifice, with that. It's baloney. It demonstrates that you have no power. See a true holy magician in power, he doesn't even have to lift his hand. He doesn't have to do anything. All he has to do is just speak. And voila. Right? I think there's a famous scene in one of my favorite movies, The Matrix, where I think this is brilliantly allegorically displayed, where throughout the movie we see the main protagonist, Neo, fighting all of these agents, and he's always having to like exert all of this energy and momentum to fight all of these agents who are his enemies. And finally, towards the last scene of the movie, he gets to a point where he doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to lift a finger. He just stands there, and just him standing there, emanating his power, is enough to destroy and subdue all of his enemies. This is the true nature and quintessence of Moshe when he was here on earth and he fought all the black magicians. There are many foolish and ignorant Jewish Kabbalists that teach that Moshe was doing some sort of esoteric rituals, you know, to combat the black magicians. But this is not the case. They've never really immersed themselves or been in the presence of a true holy saint, of a true highly powerful saint. You know, same thing with Yeshua. He wasn't performing all of these complex, you know, magical rituals to do all the miracles he did. He would just speak. Maybe he would just say a small prayer or just speak. He didn't have to do much. You don't have to do much, especially when you're so holy that Elohim is looking after you. He's already commanding angels on your behalf. What need is there for you to do anything? He's doing all the work, not you. That's the whole point of Magikh. That's the whole point of the animus of Magikh, where Elohim is working on your behalf. Now I want to reveal another very great arcanum that deals with Magikh, that I guess you could say belabors the point. I'm going to read here a very, very powerful, very, very powerful esoteric rendition and translation of a verse that has not been properly translated in many English translations of the Bible. We read in Sefer Bamidbar in chapter 23, verse 23, and listen very carefully because this is going to reveal this very arcanum that I'm trying to stress here for many of you who are beginners and low-level initiates. It states, there is no Magikh or enchantment against Yaakov, no divination against Israel. According to the time, it will be said to Yaakov and Israel what El will do. Now, this is very powerful because again, all of the impure and unholy occultists, almost all occultists, I want to say, because there really hasn't been hardly any holy occultists in the past 8 centuries, aside from the Grandmaster Jewish Kabbalists. They've never understood this because they've never lived this. They've never experienced this. The great arcanum, the animus, again, is El speaking to you. He's going to tell you and reveal to you everything. Not only is he protecting you, I've already told you that when you keep the Torah at the highest level, all 611 mitzvot, all of a sudden, legions of angels will descend upon you to protect you and guard you in all your ways. No one can touch you. There's no magic that will touch you. You're untouchable by all black magicians and sorcerers. This is a fact. And not only that, but Alwa will reveal to you what needs to be revealed to you. She'll tell you the future. She'll tell you whatever she needs to tell you. She'll tell you what you need to know to thrive and to be successful in your life and to be blessed in your life. I personally get a lot of supernatural experiences that I never asked for. I don't even pray to Elohim to protect me most of the time, nor do I pray to him to reveal to me the future or anything like that, but he's just always 5 steps ahead of me, protecting me where I need to be protected, as he's revealed to me many times and shown me many times, and he even reveals to me the future in my dreams many times as well. And I don't ask, I don't go around performing complex magical rituals to tell Elohim to give me the future or anything like that. It's not needed, it's not necessary. He just tells me what he needs to tell me. If something important is going to happen in my near future, he'll reveal it to me through a dream, vision, or whatever needs to be the case, and then I know what I need to know. And if I don't need to know it, it will not be revealed to me. Now, let us speak a little bit about spiritual hacking, because this is another parable that I like to use for explaining Magikh, right? We need to understand that we should understand and perceive that our reality is illusory in nature. It's a virtual reality, so to speak. It's just a construct. And it has a code behind it that's running it. That code is the Torah. The code that runs this construct, this virtual reality that we live in, is the Torah. It's the programming language that runs our construct or simulation. And there are legal and illegal ways to hack into this code and manipulate the construct. And there's a very, very strict fine line between holy Magikh and black Magikh, or legal hacking and illegal spiritual hacking into the simulation. So this is very critical to understand, because most of black magic is really just methods and rituals and ways to illegally hack into the code and hack into the simulation. And the Torah proscribes all such methods and rituals. But there are holy ways to hack into the code. And it is done many times by holy saints. When a holy saint multiplies bread to feed a lot of hungry people, that's an example of spiritually hacking the simulation, right? That's not normal, right? For a man to multiply loaves of bread into numerous loaves of bread to feed a lot of hungry people, like Yeshua did when he was here on earth, that's a perfect example of spiritually hacking the simulation. But he did it properly. But today we have people who are doing it improperly, right? How is that done? Angels, holy angels and archons properly, legally hacked into the code to multiply that bread that Yeshua blessed so that it would feed many hungry people. But even in our generation, we have black magicians that are performing the same miracles, but they are doing it illegally. They are employing demons. Those demons, those fallen angels, are hacking illegally into the construct, into the simulation, to multiply that bread. So this is just one of many examples. This is just one version of an example, but it would take me too long and it's too complex to fully explain the entire process and dynamics of what's going on. But it's a nice little parable to get your juices going and help you understand what's really going on here, to give you a better comprehension of magic and its nature, its essence, with respect to this virtual reality and simulation that we inhabit. Now I want to speak on holy esoteric Magikh, because this is very special. A prime and perfect example of this is what we read in the ancient Septuagint in Sefer Tobit, which unfortunately is a book that we Jews do not preserve, which is very sad. Luckily, the Christians did a good job of preserving this book through the Septuagint. We read in this book in chapter 6, verses 7 to 9, it states, "And then the young man asked the angel," which is the archangel Raphael, and said to him, "Azaryahu, what is the medicine in the fish's heart, liver, and gall?" And he said to him, "As for the fish's heart and liver, burn them in the presence of a man or woman afflicted by a demon, in this case Ashmodai, or evil spirit, and every affliction will flee away from him and will not remain with him any longer. And as for the gall, anoint a person's eyes on which white films have gone up, blow upon the white films, and they will be healed." Now, this is a perfect example of what I like to personally call holy esoteric Magikh. We have to understand that a huge, large subset of Magikh deals with esoteric rituals. Okay? Now, I'm going to do my best to try to explain this aspect of holy Magikh. You see, according to the very ancients, if you were to read the ancients and the way they define magic, it's going to be different than the way I have defined magic up to this point. Okay? You have to understand that to the ancients, the real true ancients, who are very advanced in all knowledge and wisdom, they understood that our reality is illusory, that it's a simulation. It's likened into a simulation in virtual reality. And it has a program that runs it, that runs behind it. And this program is handled and run by many of the highest archons and Elohim. Okay? And this simulation, like many of its parallel universes or simulations, was built by the highest Elohim and archons and princes. Okay? And you have to understand that when you build something, you know, imagine you're building something, right? When you build it, you being the architect, have a full 100% knowledge and understanding and comprehension of the entire holistic nature and essence of your construct that you're building. Every property, every essence, you know it. There's nothing about there's nothing about this holy construct that the Sphirot built, which is our reality. There's nothing about it that they do not know. And it's a fact. But we are inferior to the Sphirot. We are just puny entities within this construct. Now, many people like to teach that we human beings only use 10% of our brain. Right? Can you imagine if you used 100% of your brain? In that same manner, we human beings, we do not have a full holistic understanding of the nature and essence and properties of this entire construct that we inhabit. We're not the Elohim, we're not the Sphirot. But imagine you did. Imagine you knew the entire essence of the construct. Imagine if you knew every property of every living thing and matter in this universe, of every stone, of every herb, of every animal, every possible operation that can be performed, every organic possible operation that could be performed upon this earth. Imagine if you had all that knowledge and wisdom. You would be Elohim. That's the goal of the magician, to rise to that level. And this is what holy esoteric Magikh is all about, is peering and penetrating the mysteries of our construct and our nature. When you can begin to understand the properties of all the stones, both exoteric and esoteric, of herbs, of animals, everything, you name it, you understand the properties of everything, both hidden and unhidden. Because everything has a property, everything has an essence. Now, if you knew that, you would be like a living God among mortals. You would know the cure to every disease. You would know how to become invisible. You would know how to fly. You would know everything about everything. You have the entire knowledge and wisdom of the entire construct at your hand. That's power you can't buy. And we have a perfect example of that here in this verse. An example of knowledge and wisdom, hidden knowledge and wisdom of our construct, that can only be known to the most initiated magicians. Here, the Archangel Raphael is teaching this young, humble Israelite some of his holy esoteric magic. He's saying, I'm going to reveal to you some very esoteric properties of the fish's heart, liver, and gall. And he starts to reveal some of these esoteric magical properties. Namely by stating, when you burn them in the presence of a man or a woman afflicted by a demon, you'll exorcise that demon from them. He names another property. When you take the gall of a fish and you anoint a person's eyes on it, which white films have gone up, they'll disappear, right? This is a perfect example of what I'm trying to explain here. And this is a huge, large swatch of magic. This is the real magic that the ancients were penetrating, that had a knowledge and wisdom of. This is the magic that unfortunately much of our modern generation has lost to antiquity. The type of knowledge and wisdom that can only be gained through spiritual holy initiation. Well, I hope this presentation was most enlightening and illuminating. So with that said, Shalom, Amen.